appreciated that he never forced her into working less or limiting the number of patients she treated per day. He was the opposite of her late husband, who had controlled every aspect of her life, from what she wore to what she said, to how she walked, and much more. Her marriage to Homaz had ended the night she had shredded him into a pile of flesh. That was the first time the Ayins had manifested. Her braid looped around Obsidian's waist and pulled him back to the couch. "Stay," she said, yawning. "Let me spend—" The yawn stretched on, consuming her words. "More time with you." Obsidian lifted her to his lap and wrapped his cloak around her. She nestled against his chest, savouring his warmth. It was her dream to spend the days healing those in need, and the nights by her Obsidian's side, to cook for him, read with him, and lead a simple but peaceful life alongside the world's kindest and most caring gentleman. Obsidian caressed her hair, and she fought to stay awake. He said something about going somewhere, but all she could focus on was his soothing strokes. Her eyelids drooped, and soon she drifted into a peaceful sleep. The first thing Air felt when she woke up was the warmth cocooning her. She was resting atop Obsidian, who had a protective arm wrapped around her waist. His hood was slightly lifted to reveal the thick column of his neck. His skin was a beautiful shade of tan, so different from her pale white complexion. Her fingers twitched to remove the fabric and behold his face. "We say, let's do it. He's asleep. If we take a peek, he won't know." She pulled the hood down over his chin and planted a kiss on his chest. A relationship was built on trust, and she wouldn't break it. "Good morning, my diva." Obsidian's voice startled her. She looked up. "When did you wake up?" "I never slept." Of course he couldn't, lying on the small couch with her own body nestled upon him. "I'm so sorry," Air said, shifting. "I didn't know when I fell asleep. He rested a finger over her lips. "Shh. I enjoyed watching you sleep." Air's cheeks burned, and suddenly she was too aware of how close they were. Their bodies were pressed together, their chests rising and falling in unison. Before giving in to her carnal desires, Air sat up, untangling herself from him. Her tresses coiled around his arms, and she tore them away, willing them into a braid. Obsidian chuckled. "I must get going," he said, adjusting his cloak as he got up. Air accompanied him to the door, where he halted, taking her hands into his. "Today, before sunset. Don't be late." "I won't," Air said, leaning forward to kiss his broad chest and inhale his scent. He kissed her forehead before turning to leave. "Good day." Air stood just outside her cottage, arms wrapped around herself against the morning chill. The Nar sun bathed the surroundings in a soft orange light, illuminating the coral grass leading from her doorstep toward the forest that separated her dwelling from Obsidian's. A strange sensation filled her chest as she watched Obsidian striding away, as if their hearts were joined with a string, and with each step he took, the string pulled. "We say, don't let him leave." Air called after Obsidian, and he turned. Her braid rose, weaving its way to him. She followed. By the time she hugged him, her hair was already coiled around his waist. He returned the embrace. "I love you." The words came out without any hesitation. She'd intended to say them after he'd removed his hood so she could see his expression, but her heart told her to wait no longer. Obsidian drew a sharp breath, his hands tightening around her. "Say that again." "I love you," she repeated, to the point that it hurts. Something warm dropped on her neck. She brought her hand under his hood and traced his cheeks. They were rough with stubble and wet. "You're crying," she said, her own eyes watering. It took him a moment to find his voice. "I've waited a long time to hear these words from you." He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a tender kiss upon it. "I love you too, my diva, with all my imperfections, but it is my wish to love you so perfectly that none of my flaws would keep you from loving me back." Air had never heard words more beautiful. She smiled and leaned closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You don't have to be perfect, Obsidian," she said, tears rolling down her eyes. "I embrace every part of you, just as you are." In the evening, Air ran through the forest, separating her cottage from Obsidian's hut. The full moon shone with a bold glow, spilling its silvery light over the trees. She was so late. Her patient's treatment had lasted longer than she had expected. Hopefully, Obsidian wouldn't be upset. As the hut became visible, Air could barely contain her smile. She was going to see his face, learn his real name. Her hair danced around her in curls of mint. What color were his hair, his eyes? What letter did his name start with? So many questions, all of which would be answered that day. His last words echoed in her mind. "I love you too, my diva, with all my imperfections." She would love his flaws as much as she loved his strengths, for the combination was what made him, him. The door was ajar when she reached his home. He had probably left it open for her. She held her breath as she stepped inside, hoping to find Obsidian without his hood, smiling. Did he have dimples? Her own smile vanished at what she beheld. A Mosalas.